It's Wednesday, the day after the major event of this campaign, at least so far. And we've definitely got some thoughts about the great debate that was held last night. Welcome to the Zogby Report, Real and Unscripted. I'm John, and as always, for the past almost 5 years, I'm with Jeremy. How you doing?
Hey, I have to say that it's too bad that we can't make this podcast 90 minutes because I think we have a lot to say, but we'll condense it.
We'll condense it. Okay, so here we go. It was long anticipated. It was really the coming out of Kamala Harris as a presidential candidate. There was pressure, but most of the pressure was on her because many more voters said they didn't know enough about her, wanted to know more about her than said that about Donald Trump, who, of course, has been around forever. She came out to play last night. She was coached and coached well, and she performed as if she was coached well. She came out confident. She came out cool. She maintained that demeanor the entire evening. Frankly, she looked presidential, and that's in a video age, that's very important. She stuck to facts. I thought, all in all, she did well and well enough to win, and to win by points. There were no knockout blows. She tried. Former President Trump tried, but really nothing that knocked them seriously off their game. She failed, I believe, right in the very beginning when she was asked the question, what can you tell voters about whether or not they're better off than they were 3.5 years ago? And she dodged that completely and moved to telling about opportunity economy and the future. She's going to have to do better than that because, as you well know, Jared, the economy is by far the number one issue, and she has to answer to inflation. Incidentally, she and President Biden got some good news just this morning with a new report saying that inflation is easing again down to an annualized 2.5%. However, that's still a rise above rises, above significant rises. Prices are too high. I think she did badly on the issue of fracking. She has changed her position, and her position was strong against fracking. And this was, of course, a debate that was held in Pennsylvania, where that is a major and highly supported issue. She did well as a prosecutor. She really got in some zingers against Donald Trump. But let's look at Trump really briefly for a second. In order to prove his seriousness and gravitas, he came out scowling, and he continued his scowling. And in fact, I don't know that necessarily served him well. He did get some good lines. I think he had the line of the evening when he said, in essence, you're promising all these things, but you've been here for 3.5 years. Why didn't you do it then? I thought that's a good line, an effective one, and I think that could dog her. By the same token, and I weigh my words carefully, he was goofy at times. Haitians eating pets in Springfield, Ohio, that has been debunked by every news organization and none other than law enforcement and the city manager in that little city. But to come up with something like that, to be talking about the size of his rallies, the greatest, most populous rallies in American history, that's just silly, and it made him look silly. So I'll summarize very quickly by saying she won on points, but she has not closed the deal. This campaign is on. I don't expect any significant bump. I think she'll get back to some of the momentum she had throughout August, maybe putting her in the lead by a couple of points. But I don't see any major changes in the polls. How about you?
I would have to agree with that. I don't think, and I'm going to be absolutely fair. I think first you have to understand that not only were these two completely different styles, two completely different personalities, two completely different realities, but this is representative of two completely different Americas. Right? I talked about last time on the podcast how they are representative. They're the epitome of our demographic divide. In almost every major demographic you can come up with, they're the face of each and represent the intensity, the opposite polar end of various demographics, but also the spirit, the outlook, and the experience. It's very fascinating to analyze it through that lens. That you basically have two Americas that are experiencing two different realities, and once you understand that, and that you agree that they fit those roles, and that they communicated those vastly different visions of the current and the future America, you understand that there wasn't a winner. Kamala Harris did exceed expectations. I think a lot of people were concerned, given that she had such a short CNN interview. A lot of people were probably anticipating, can she handle the 90 minutes? The last time she was on the debate stage, there was the grilling experience that she got from Tulsi Gabbard, and shortly after she dropped out. And you know, I mean, let's be honest, she performed terribly in 2018, but she rose to the occasion. As you said, she was coached well. She was confident, and she didn't fumble over any words, and she articulated herself well. Let's be honest, neither really had any substance on policy, but that's just been the way it is when you have a format that allows you 2 minutes on an issue, right, and a rebuttal. But with that said, I can't help but notice the style of raw anger versus, you know, kind of what I would call a rehearsed optimism. But those contrasting visions and views and stances speak volumes. And as a result, I mean, this is what's reflecting in the polls. This is why the polls are essentially, you know, even within the margin of error. I would say the results of the debate follow suit. I think Donald Trump surprised me on the issue of abortion. I would have expected that he would have, you know, bombed that one. But I thought, I have to be honest, I thought he handled that very well and cleverly. We knew going in that he was going to repeat crime and immigration over and over and over and over again. That is such a powerful sentiment. Those are among the top two of the top three issues. Those are, you know, oftentimes the top two, and even among independent voters. Foreign policy was very interesting. See, all of this was very interesting because Donald Trump coming in with a record as president, and to see Harris go at him on his strong points, I have to say that was strong on her case. But I completely agree with you that I don't think it moved the needle. I would really be curious to see among independents. Of course, we're going to be doing some polling probably over the next week, so we'll be able to detect that, and then some other key swing cohorts.
So here's what's going on here, and it's just buttresses what you just said. We keep talking about hyperpolarization, but we don't get down with some granularity. Why are some people more optimistic than others? Well, fact of the matter is 70 to 75% believe the country is headed in the wrong direction. Mm-hmm. That's a very important statement.
Yeah.
There are people, many people, millions of people, and not just the middle class, who are losing ground. And that includes status anxiety, food insecurity. It means a growing sense, particularly, I alluded to this the other day, a growing sense among young men that there is no future. And so we've got race involved here as to who's doing better and who's doing worse. We've got gender now, and gender and race. I mean, black men doing worse than black women and doing worse than white women. We have gender involved on the abortion issue. And unlike you, I have to be honest, I thought he completely blew that issue of abortion, particularly when he raised the ridiculous issue of Democrats supporting the execution of newborn infants. That did not help him. And again, that was just a goofy thing to say, so much so that he got fact checked on that one and on the eating pets by none other than the moderators themselves. But we have these fundamental splits. Who is doing better and who's doing worse? There are more people, as we know, who say that they're doing worse. And that's what keeps this race competitive. If it were a battle of leadership style and personality, she'd be measuring the drapes in the White House for her inauguration because she came out as a leader and with the correct demeanor and at least attempted a vision. He, on the other hand, she's right, portrayed a negative America to, let's face it, a significant number of people who see that negative America, in their lives and around the corner. I have no idea what's going to happen from here. I do think, like I said, she got a bounce and became more competitive than Joe Biden during the month of October, took it about as far as she could. Yes, I think she'll get back onto that momentum, but this race is going down to the wire.
Yes, it is going down to the wire. To be more precise, I wouldn't say that the and this is just clarifying something I may have alluded to earlier, that I wouldn't say that the division is anger over joy, right? Because that's joy is the key phrase that we're hearing from the DNC and from the Democratic Party, from the top down. This notion that they're joyful and Kamala represents joy. I think from the voter perspective, I think it's more. It's not so much an optimism, but it's a desire for optimism, because a lot of people, as you said, 75%, 3/4 of Americans think that the country is headed in the wrong direction with a Democratic executive. And so from the Democratic voters, it's a desire for optimism, and she has to deliver that among a nation in crisis. And so really what this comes down to is I think what voters are ultimately going to vote on is who is the man or the woman for this country as we enter the next phase of turbulent times. The turbulent times are there. They're going to be there regardless of which administration
That's
you
true.
have. I tend to agree with the notion of the fourth turning. I don't know that I completely buy into the mysterious mechanics that Strauss and Howe laid out in terms of generational cycles, but there does seem to be an obvious pattern of this notion of the fourth turning. If our viewers and listeners don't know what that is, I would strongly encourage them to at least look it up or watch a video on it or read an article about it. It lends credence to the notion of cyclical history, and we are entering that. Nothing is going to stop that, and voters know that. It's going to come down to which person do they want in the White House as we move into greater turbulent times. I can't help but notice, and look, I don't feel it's my job to say to determine what Harris or Trump says, whether it's a lie or not, because I understand voters. I understand people. People make up their minds. The vast, vast, vast majority of people make up their minds. And I've learned over the years not to waste my time to try and say otherwise or get them to agree otherwise. What I'm particularly elaborating on is that I just operate with the notion that most politicians are going to exaggerate and lie, right? That's just what they do by nature, because the truth is ugly, and it's not always the best strategy to tell the raw truth. Trump is tapping into anger. He's going to exaggerate. Harris is tapping into the desire to fuel people with optimism. She's going to ignore the failures of the Biden administration. But this is the most key point here. Notice how the debate, Trump was really going against three people. I have to sort of empathize with that. That's not a comfortable situation to be in, to have a debate opponent and two journalists who will only really fact check what you say. Look, Harris could have been fact checked on a lot of things. She wasn't followed up on very tough or harsh or rigorously on some of the things she said. Of course, Trump was. Maybe Americans have grown accustomed to that, but when we're weighing who won, I don't think we can forget the fact that Trump was effectively up against three people.
Final word for me, he was up against three people. She was fact-checked on a couple of instances. That's normally what happens. The candidates will get fact-checked in the past within a couple of days, sometimes on the hour, within the hour. But in this instance, eating pets, the size of crowds, infant executions, those are just preposterous, and they've already been investigated. So yes, there were three opponents, and I'll admit that there were three opponents. Lindsay, the moderator, was interviewing Trump before that group of black journalists when he talked about all of a sudden Kamala Harris becoming black. So look, let's say there's bad blood, and Mr. Trump has certainly cultivated bad blood with the news media, even though they're very dependent on him. But yeah, he had three opponents last night.
Yeah,
probably deservedly.
I don't get into these things. I don't get into. I let the viewers decide what they think. I don't need to repeat who said what and what was ridiculous. Everybody saw it. Everybody heard it. Everybody's going to come to their own conclusions. They're going to look at the information. They're going to go try and research it for themselves. But I don't think it's the job of moderators to say this has been fact checked, because look, news organizations, they're not the standard of fact checking. They're not. They're the standard of pushing narratives, and that goes for every news organization that has an ideology. That's what they do. I think they should really just let the candidates debate it out and let the viewers determine for themselves, and not try to move the needle and say, we are the gatekeepers of the truth and the facts, and we can confirm for you this isn't real. People should be doing that. That's why we vote.
Amen. Sort of. But okay, good conversation. We, of course, will be back, maybe sooner rather than later. Things are heating up a little bit, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think she gets a bump in the polls. So we'll see.
Well, you and I both know that that's going to depend on the polling organization. So really, watch for our poll.
That's right. Folks love to say the only poll that counts is on election day, but the reality is the only poll that counts is the one done by Zogby Strategies.
Amen to that for sure.
Amen. Okay. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.